All right, welcome. We're about to go on a whirlwind tour through 1,500 years of British literary history. We're going to see how the stories Britain told itself went from these epic poems about heroes and monsters to the prize-winning novels we talk about today. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did we get from point A to point B? Well, it's a story about history, about huge shifts in how people saw the world. And honestly, it's a story of some absolutely incredible characters, both the ones on the page and the brilliant minds who created them. We're talking about foundational figures, people like Chaucer, who basically gave us a perfect snapshot of the entire medieval world. And then there's Shakespeare, a writer so important he didn't just write amazing stories, he literally helped invent the English language as we know it. And how someone like Austen could so perfectly capture all the complicated social rules and romances of her time. To Dickens, who used his novels to shine a light on the darkest corners of a country that was changing at lightning speed. And finally, how a total game changer like Virginia Woolf just threw out the rulebook to explore what it's really like inside the human mind. These are the titans, the heavy hitters who define each chapter of this story. Okay, let's dive right in. So our story kicks off in a really chaotic time, a time when a new language was being forged and the very first great stories of heroes and ordinary people were being told. Now, think of this timeline as our roadmap for the whole journey. We're starting way, way back, between 450 and 1500, in what we call the Old and Middle English period. So what was this world actually like? To put it mildly, it was intense. You had constant invasions from Anglo-Saxons and Vikings, this really strict feudal system, and then these massive historical moments like the Magna Carta, which planted the very first seeds of what we think of as human rights. But it was also a world shaped by utter catastrophe. I mean, just think about this for a second. The Black Death wiped out at least a third of the entire population. That is a staggering loss of life that completely turned society on its head. It created labor shortages, which funnily enough led to peasant revolts where people started demanding more rights. And all this chaos is the backdrop for our first great literary works. What's so cool about this slide is how it shows two completely different worlds. On the one hand, you have Beowulf, a product of that early, hardcore Anglo-Saxon warrior culture. It's all about a hero fighting literal monsters. But then you get Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, which is something totally different. It's a bunch of stories told by people from every single part of society, from knights to cooks, giving us this incredible, lively picture of what life was actually like. Okay, next up, we're jumping into a period of incredible cultural explosion, a time when theater, poetry, and the power of the individual really took center stage. This is the Renaissance. Back to our map, you can see we're now entering the Renaissance, what people often call the golden age of English literature. We've moved forward into the 1500s and 1600s. This era was really a perfect storm of innovation. You had Queen Elizabeth I creating a stable country where art could just flourish. People were rediscovering all these incredible ideas from ancient Greece and Rome. And maybe most importantly, the printing press arrived, which was a total game changer. It made books way cheaper and more accessible, spreading ideas like wildfire. Suddenly, literature wasn't just about God, it was about us, about humanity. And right at the heart of all this was, of course, William Shakespeare. It is truly impossible to overstate his impact. With timeless masterpieces like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, he didn't just explore what it means to be human, he actually enriched the English language itself, creating words and phrases we still use every single day. All right, our next stop is a really fascinating period of conflict. Not on a battlefield, but a battle of ideas. It was a showdown between the cool, detached logic of the Enlightenment and the fiery, passionate heart of the Romantics. And this slide just lays out that clash perfectly. The neoclassical period was all about reason, logic, and using sharp satire to question society. Think of something as biting as Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. But then the Romantics came along and basically rebelled against all of that. For them, it was all about the individual, about intense emotion, the power of imagination, and the wild, untamed beauty of nature. And a huge part of that romantic passion gave birth to the Gothic novel. This genre took all those big emotions and mixed them with a dose of horror, mystery, and the supernatural. The ultimate example, of course, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a story that still gives us chills and makes us think, even today. And now we enter the long reign of Queen Victoria. This was an age of massive progress and empire building, but it was also an age of deep, deep social inequality, which, as it turns out, was the perfect fuel for a new generation of writers. The Victorian world was one of huge contrasts. On one hand, the Industrial Revolution was creating unbelievable wealth and changing the world with new technology, but on the other, it was creating horrible poverty and brutal working conditions. The British Empire stretched across the entire globe, yet society back home was incredibly divided. So it's really no surprise that the novel became the perfect way to explore all these massive social problems. And man, were there some giants in this era. You have Charles Dickens, of course, exposing the tough lives of the poor in classics like Great Expectations. You have the Bronte sisters writing these passionate, dark, and unforgettable stories like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. And you even get the birth of modern detective fiction with Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, celebrating logic in a very messy world. Our final stop takes us into the 20th and 21st centuries. This is a time where two world wars just shattered old ways of thinking, forcing writers to find radical, brand new ways to tell stories about a world that felt broken. You know, after the horrors of World War I, the old, confident Victorian style of storytelling just didn't seem to fit anymore. So, in response, modernism was born. Writers like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce completely rejected simple, straightforward plots. They started experimenting with new techniques like stream of consciousness to try and capture the messy, chaotic, real-life flow of a person's thoughts and feelings from moment to moment. After modernism, we got postmodernism, which often played around with the very idea of what a story is. But a really great way to see where literature is today is to look at the Booker Prize. It celebrates the best new fiction every year, and it highlights just how incredibly diverse storytelling has become. You've got everything from the heartbreaking sci-fi of Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go to the incredible multi-voiced masterpiece that is Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other. So, from Beowulf all the way to the Booker Prize, British literature has always been a mirror, reflecting and shaping the world around it. And that leaves us with one last big question. In our age of AI and instant digital media, what are the stories we're going to tell next? What will be the next chapter in this incredible ongoing journey?